Plus. This lecture will cover Chapter 8, looking at friction. This will be covering sections 8.1 and 8.2. So section 8.1 looks at the characteristics of dry friction. So when we're thinking about friction, normally when we're thinking about this is for designing things such as brake systems for bicycles, cars, or anything else that might need frictional forces involved in order to stop the motion of something. Here we see this example where the rope is being used to pull the refrigerator. In order to pull the refrigerator, it's best that they pull it up, horizontally or downwards. The use of different equilibrium equations and frictional force equations is what we can use to determine which direction force must be used to keep something from moving or to push past frictional forces that are being applied to an object. Friction is defined as a force of resistance acting on a body which prevents or resists the slipping of a body relative to a second body. Experiments show that frictional forces act tangent or planar to the contacting surface in direction opposing relative motion or tendency of motion. So in the image above, we see how frictional forces may apply to this box. We see that we have normal force, which is the ground acting up against that weight that's pushing down. If you notice, the normal force has, instead of it just being at one point, we see it all over the ground. And this makes sense, right? That it's well distributed throughout the box. Take a look at the image all the way to the right. We see how the frictional force, which acts parallel to the ground, is perpendicular with the normal force, and the resultant force is the resultant force of friction that is keeping this from moving here. We see how the rigids and the little divots inside the box can act against the surfaces of the ground to create this frictional force. For the images above, we have F equals P, which makes sense. That's saying that the friction that is friction against the force that's pushing it or pulling it, however you may look at it. In order for that to be stationary, we must have that the frictional force moving in the x direction must cancel out with the force that's moving the object. Then we also have the normal force equals the weight. So the force pushing up onto the box is the same amount of force that's pushing down to it, which makes sense. This is what keeps it in equilibrium. From what we know about couple moments, we see from the picture all the way on the right that when you have a box that's experiencing motion, right? If we take a look at the variables P and F, this looks similar to what we saw for couple moments, where there's a distance between them. Here we show it as H. So in order for this box to be stationary and not moving, the moment that's created from pushing the box must be able to be in equilibrium with the moment that's created from the box being pushed down from gravity or weight. So if you end up putting too much force on a box, or if you end up pushing a box from the top, right, you notice that the object will sort of tip over or it will tilt, right? And that's because the moment that is created from that horizontal push and the friction is greater than the moment that's canceling out with it from the gravity and the normal force. But for it to be in equilibrium, we must have that W of x is equal to P of h. Well, for these studies, we're going to assume for now that tipping does not occur, which means we're going to either assume that the h is small or that A, which is the whole, width of the box, is large, right? If we have a really, really long object, you try to push it, it won't tilt over because of that large length of the object. The maximum friction force is attained just before the block begins to move, right? So here we see that for a box, or any object, there's normally a static or kinetic friction that prevents an object from moving in a direction. So in the graph, we see here that initially a box would have no push on it or pull on it, and then there's no frictional force acting against it. But as it keeps increasing, there's a certain point where the static friction, which is the friction that prevents the box from moving, reaches its maximum. And then once the amount of push you're putting on it overwhelms the amount of static force that's keeping the box from moving, you start moving the box, and then the kinetic friction is what's acting on the box. It's important to know that often kinetic friction is normally less than the static friction. In the bottom right, we see the two graphs of what these look like. They're basically the same, except for impending friction or impending motion. This is the point at which the box is just about to move. That is where we have the highest amount of friction. That's where we have the most static friction. You can only find the coefficient for static friction when an object is about to move. And then on the right, we see the kinetic friction. What happens is it is in motion, but there's still the friction on the floor pushing on it, but it is not, kinetic friction is not of high enough magnitude to prevent the object from moving. It's also very important to know that the frictional force may be less than the maximum friction force, right? So we can say that we're trying to push a box. It doesn't mean that the friction that box is going to experience is going to be the maximum the box is experiencing before it is moving, right? You can leave a box without pushing it, and it will have a pretty small frictional force, but the amount of force that you apply to it right before it moves will be a higher friction, right? So if you put your hand on the ground, you won't feel that much friction, but if you move it slightly, you put more force onto it and you feel more frictional force, but you're not completely moving it or sliding back and forth. So do not assume that um, the friction force when you're solving for a problem is equal to the maximum friction that is being applied to it. When an object is on the verge of sliding, the coefficient of static friction can be found using the following equation. This is not too far from what we first learned about vectors, where you just have, previously we had tangent of the vertical component over the horizontal component. Here we're having tangent of the force of S over the normal, and that gives you our coefficient for the static friction. Similarly, for kinetic friction, you have the magnitude of the force of kinetic friction over the normal force, and that will give you the kinetic coefficient. Or you could just use tangent of the angle between them in order to find that kinetic friction coefficient. For the problems that we'll be solving, there are three general types of friction problems. No apparent impending motion problems, problems that have impending motion at all points of contact, and then problems that have impending motion at some points of contact. There are three general types of these problems. So the first one we're looking at is the no apparent impending motion. These problems are just basically equilibrium problems which require the number of unknowns to be equal to the number of available equations. You can solve these without the friction equations, but you can double check your answers by using the friction equations to make sure that it aligns with what you found. The second type, which is impending motion at all points of contact, the total number of unknowns for these type of problems are equal to the total number of equilibrium equations plus frictional equations. So you do need your frictional equations here to solve your impending motion for at all points of contact for an object. The last general type of frictional problem is the numbers is the impending motion at some points of contact. And for this one, the number of unknowns will be less than the total number of equilibrium equations plus frictional equations. So you'll end up with more equations than you need to be able to solve this one. An important thing to note is that in this case, equilibrium equations versus frictional equations, before we had equilibrium equations where you could draw a free body diagram and it didn't matter the direction you put, you would just find that your final answer would be negative, right? And you would know that your force is just in the opposite direction. And this worked because equilibrium equations always equate to zero, so your answer will always ending up equal to zero. But for frictional equations, it doesn't have that same concept since it only relates by magnitude and perpendicular vectors. It doesn't have the same ability to just flip signs. So if you get your sense of direction wrong when you draw the free body diagrams for frictional equations, you will end up getting the wrong answer. So it's important to make sure that you draw the sense of direction correctly. So for this example up here, we're showing that the object is pushed to the right. You notice that both the frictions that are applied to the bottom of the rods are going in the left direction. Last thing to look at for this section is impending tipping versus slipping. So it's trying to determine whether an object is going to tip over or slip over. In these problems, we will be given the weight of the object and then the height at which the object is being pushed or pulled. So you'll end up knowing what the force. You'll end up finding what the frictional force is going against it, the normal forces, and then the distances, right? And then you can use that with whether assuming that it's tipping over or slipping over to determine which one it is. So your assumptions will end up looking one of these two. For if we're assuming that a slipping occurs, we assume that we know what the frictional force is. We'll solve for x, p, and n, and then we'll check using that x distance to see that it is in between the b over 2, which is the width of the object. For tipping, you flip it around the other way. You assume that you know that that the normal force is acting all the way at the end of the object, which is assuming that x is equal to b over 2. And then you solve for p, n, and f. And then you check with your frictional equations to make sure that this is consistent with what you're looking for. So the example we're looking for this lecture today, it says, the uniform crate shown below has a mass of 20 kilograms. If a force of P equals 80 newtons is applied to the crate, determine if it remains in equilibrium. The coefficient of static friction is 0.3. So here we have the free body diagram. It shows what the normal force would look like. It shows what the frictional force would look like on the bottom of the box, and then it also shows that gravitational force that's acting on the box from the 20 kilogram weight. And here it shows it as 106.2 newtons. Write out our equations of equilibrium. So we have our x equations, which is just the force from you pushing on it from 80 newtons, which is 80 newtons times cosine of 30, minus that frictional force that's pushing against it. And then the y is that same, it's the y component of the pushing downwards towards it, and the weight of gravity plus the normal force that's acting on the crate. Then the moment that's used here is about the point O, and then it's found using both the push from P and the normal force that is acting on this. We have that there's no gravitational force for this moment because that gravitational force is acting on the line of the origin. You get that the frictional force here is 69.3. The normal force acting on the crate is 236 newtons, and then we get that there's a distance of about negative 9.08 millimeters that the normal force is acting on the crate. From that negative 9.08 millimeters, we know that it's acting on the left of the crate and not the right of the crate. So it's the left of the center line. And then we know that there won't be any tipping since that 9.08 millimeters is a lot less than 0.4, right? It's not equal to that, it's a lot less than that. So it's not going to be, the object won't be tipping. And then we see that frictional force, if you use the static equation, the maximum frictional force that could occur here is 70.9 newtons. And then what we found from our equations and solving for how P affects this is that the frictional force that it's experiencing is 69.3 newtons. So this is less than the maximum static friction that could be applied to this before it starts slipping. So the crate will not be moving and it will not be slipping. If there's any other questions on this lecture, please feel free to email me or let me know during class. Thank you.